So, let me take you back to last Thanksgiving. My name's Sam. I'm 28, and for the past few years, I've been doing the whole family Thanksgiving thing out of duty. You know, the kind where you show up, smile through the awkward conversations, and pretend like everything's fine when in reality, you're just counting the minutes until you can escape. My family's always been complicated, but this year was different. It all started months before Thanksgiving when I realized something. I was carrying my entire family financially. My mom, my older brother James, and even my Aunt Linda. They've been draining me for years, asking for loans, emergency cash, gifts. And I've been more than happy to help. At least, I used to be. But after the last few months of being constantly asked for more, I started to feel the weight of it. My job pays decently, but it's not like I'm rolling in money, and I had my own bills to pay. Yet, every time one of them asked for money, I felt guilty if I said no. "Oh, Sam, I don't know what I'd do without you," my mom would say, her voice full of drama as she called me for the third time in a week to borrow a couple $100s. I'd always give in, feeling bad that I had so much and they had so little. But what really stung was how entitled they'd become over time. My mom never thanked me for any of it, never once. It was always, "I need this, I need that," but never, "Thank you for helping. I don't know what I'd do without you." And don't get me started on James. He's 35, still living with mom, and could barely hold a job for more than a few months. Every time I asked him what his plans were, he'd give me some vague answer about working on himself, but deep down, I knew he wasn't really doing anything to change. All he did was sit around and wait for handouts. Then there was Aunt Linda, who made it a habit to borrow money and never return it. "Sam, can you help me with my rent this month?" "Just this once. I promise it'll be the last time," she'd say. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the last time. I reached my breaking point one night when I got home from work and saw a text from my mom. It was a long one, like one of those texts that's way too long for something that should have been simple. She needed a small loan to cover her bills again. I didn't even want to read the rest of it, because I knew it'd be the same as every other request. But I did. "The kicker?" she said, "If you can't help me, I'll be in a really bad spot. You know how much I depend on you." That last sentence? It hit me like a ton of bricks. She was making me feel responsible for her financial well-being. I was her lifeline. And here I was, barely able to keep my own head above water. I had a moment of clarity that night, sitting in my living room, staring at my phone. I realized that I was letting myself be used. I was the ATM for my family, and they never seemed to care about what I needed. They just expected me to be there, pouring out my time and energy for them without a second thought about my own struggles. So, I made a decision. A hard one. I was done. Done being their financial safety net. Done being the one they relied on for everything. And done being guilt-tripped into helping them when it drained me. I didn't tell anyone right away. I didn't want a big confrontation. I thought maybe I could just pull back and stop answering their calls and texts as often. But of course, that didn't work. They kept reaching out, more insistent than ever, and I kept saying no. First, it was a simple, "Sorry, I can't help right now." Then it escalated to, "I'm not able to lend you money anymore." And finally, I stopped responding altogether. That's when my mom called me. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and she was in full-on panic mode. "Sam, what's going on? Why aren't you answering my calls?" "I really need you," she said, sounding almost desperate. But I didn't care anymore. I calmly told her that I wasn't in a position to help anymore and that they needed to figure things out on their own. Her response was not what I expected. "You're no longer welcome here," she said, her voice cold. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? I can't believe you're abandoning your own family like this." Those words cut deep. My own mother, saying I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving? After everything I'd done for her and the family? It was like a slap in the face. But I didn't let her see how much it hurt. Instead, I told her I was done. And I hung up. The next day, I didn't go to Thanksgiving dinner. I stayed home, alone, nursing a glass of a drink and scrolling through social media, watching as my family posted their usual pictures of the Thanksgiving feast. My mom, aunt, and brother all together, happy as can be, without me. I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, betrayal, a little sadness, sure, but mostly relief. It felt like a weight had been lifted. But the drama didn't end there. 2 weeks later, I got a text from James. "Hey man, I'm really sorry about what happened. Mom's been freaking out, and I think she just didn't understand. Can you help us out again? Just for the holidays." I didn't even respond. It was the same thing over and over again. They expected me to give and give, and when I stopped, they couldn't handle it. But that wasn't the end of it. Oh no, it got worse. Aunt Linda reached out next. Sam, I don't know what's going on with you, but you've got to come to Thanksgiving next year. Mom's devastated. We all are. Please just come back. Your family. They were begging. And the worst part? I knew they didn't really care about me. They cared about the money I could give them. They wanted me to come back, to be the same old Sam, who just handed out cash every time they asked. A week passed, and I kept to my decision. I didn't answer any calls, didn't reply to any messages. My family had pushed me too far, and now I was pulling away. It wasn't easy. I had moments where I second-guessed myself, wondering if I'd gone too far, if I'd made a mistake. After all, they were still my family. But every time I remembered how they had used me without a second thought, the doubt faded. I'd been more than generous with them for years, and it was clear that they didn't value me. They just valued what I could give. I spent Christmas alone. It was strange, but also peaceful. I cooked myself a nice dinner, curled up with a good book, and watched a few movies. No drama, no requests for money. Just me, finally feeling like I could breathe again. I didn't need to be there, playing the role of the financial savior anymore. For once, I was just Sam, and that was enough. But then, just as I thought the storm had passed, the messages started rolling in. At first, it was a few passive-aggressive texts from my mom, the kind where she pretended she wasn't angry but clearly was. It's really sad you're missing out on the holidays, one text said. Your Aunt Linda and James said they miss you. Maybe it's time to reconsider. That text was followed by another. I'm just worried about you, Sam. This isn't like you. I didn't respond, but the guilt still lingered. I could feel myself starting to weaken. Maybe I was being too harsh. After all, they were my family, and the holidays were supposed to be about togetherness, right? Then came the phone call. It was New Year's Eve, and I was making myself a nice dinner, trying to enjoy the last night of the year. My phone rang, and I saw it was from my mom. I hesitated for a moment before answering, my heart pounding in my chest. Sam, my mom's voice was strained, almost pleading. I've been thinking. I know I said things I shouldn't have, and I've been really upset. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. We all miss you. It's been hard without you. Please, can we talk? Maybe you can come over and we can fix things. It felt like a punch to the gut. After everything, she was still pulling the "we miss you" card. I could tell she wasn't really sorry for how she treated me. She was sorry because I wasn't there to pay her bills anymore. But I had to admit, a part of me still wanted to believe she cared. So, I listened. Sam, it's been hard on all of us. We all need you, especially James. He's having a really tough time. He doesn't know how to manage things, and without you, we're lost. I was quiet for a long time, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I wasn't sure if I could trust her. It was the same old pattern. They needed me, but only when they had a problem. When things were going well for them, I was invisible. Finally, I spoke up, trying to keep my voice steady. You can't keep treating me like this, Mom. I'm not your ATM. I've given you everything I have, and it's never enough. I'm not the one who's messed up here. You are. You've been using me for years, and I'm done. I've made my decision. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing heavily, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But she didn't. Instead, she said, in the most venomous tone I'd ever heard from her, "Fine. You can stay away then. Don't come crawling back when you realize that family is all you've got. You'll regret this, Sam." Her words stung, but I felt something shift in me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm. It was the first time I'd ever stood up for myself like that, and it felt good. I hung up without another word. The next few weeks were a blur. James didn't reach out anymore. I didn't expect him to. He wasn't really capable of understanding that I was tired of being the one to fix everything for him. Aunt Linda sent a few more passive-aggressive texts, but I ignored them. I stayed firm in my decision. But then, things took an unexpected turn. One morning, I was at work when I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering, but something told me it was important. I picked up. Sam. The voice on the other end was shaky, and I immediately recognized it as my mom's. Sam, please. I need your help. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Help? I repeated, incredulous. After everything? You've got the nerve to call me for help? There was silence on the other end of the line. My mom's voice wavered when she spoke again. I know I've asked too much. I've been wrong. But Sam, I've got no one else. Please. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but I wasn't ready to fall for it again. She'd played this game for so long that I could see right through it. But I also knew that I was at a crossroads. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I had to decide if I was going to give in to the guilt that had haunted me for years or if I was finally going to show them that I was done. Done being the family bank. Done being the one they could always count on to bail them out. I sat in silence for a long moment, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Finally, I spoke. "No, Mom. I'm done." I could hear her gasp in disbelief, but I continued. "I'm sorry you're in this situation, but this is not my problem anymore. You need to figure this out without me." I hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace. My family had pushed me to the edge, but I had finally taken control, and I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. I knew the fallout from this would be messy. I knew they would be angry, maybe even hate me for it. But for once, I wasn't afraid of their reaction. I wasn't afraid of the guilt. I was finally free. The days that followed were oddly quiet. No calls, no texts. It felt like my family had finally given up, or at least that's what I told myself. I went on with my life, trying to put the whole thing behind me. For once, I was living for me and not for the expectations that had always been forced onto me. I focused more on work, took up some hobbies I'd been putting off, and started hanging out with friends I hadn't seen in ages. But the silence wasn't meant to last. A week later, as I was leaving work, I got another call. This time, it wasn't from my mom, but from an unfamiliar number. I answered it reluctantly, feeling a strange pit in my stomach. "Hello?" "Sam," a deep voice said, and immediately I recognized it. It was James, my half-brother. I hadn't heard from him in months, so his sudden call felt like a punch to the gut. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need your help." I couldn't believe it. I wasn't even angry at first. I just felt a deep, exhausted kind of sadness. James had always been like this, unable to handle life's responsibilities, constantly looking for someone to bail him out. I had spent years giving him that help, but it had drained me in ways I wasn't even sure how to explain. So, hearing from him now, after everything, was the last thing I expected. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. My instinct was to just hang up, but a part of me wanted to hear him out. Maybe, just maybe, he'd changed. Maybe he'd finally figured out how to take responsibility for his own life. I messed up," he said, his voice hesitant. "Big time. I don't know who else to turn to. Mom isn't helping. She's too angry at me. And now I've got these bills piling up, and my rent is overdue. I don't know what to do." I could hear the desperation in his voice, and I almost felt a twinge of pity for him. But then it hit me. He was doing exactly what he always did, trying to make me feel bad enough to give in. To rescue him from the consequences of his own actions. The same pattern I had fallen for over and over again. "You know what, James?" I said, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. "I'm really sorry you're in this situation. I truly am. But I can't keep doing this for you." I heard him sigh on the other end of the line. "Sam, please. I don't know what else to do. I've been there for you. I've given you so much, and you just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. I can't keep bailing you out." There was a long silence, and I could feel the tension growing. Then, in a voice that was almost broken, James said, "So that's it? You're really done?" I didn't answer right away. I was torn. The old part of me wanted to tell him everything would be fine, that I would help him like I always had. But the new part of me, the part that was tired of being used, was firm. I had to stick to my decision. "Yeah, James. I'm done," I said softly but firmly. "I can't keep doing this for you. You have to figure it out on your own. You're an adult now." I could hear him trying to hold it together, but I knew I had struck a nerve. "Fine," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I guess I'll figure it out." I hung up before I could second-guess myself. And for a moment, it felt like I'd done the right thing. But then, not 10 minutes later, I got a message. It was from my mom. The text read, "You've hurt James more than you know. This is on you now. You'll regret this." I stared at it for a while, my emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to reply, to tell her how much she had hurt me, how much she had taken from me. But I didn't. I had already made up my mind. It didn't matter how much they tried to guilt-trip me, manipulate me, or shame me into helping. This was my life now, and I wasn't going to let them control it anymore. The next day, I woke up to find several missed calls from both my mom and James. A few messages, too. I didn't check them. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they'd say. Guilt. Regret. Pleas for help. I couldn't help but feel a small twinge of anger. How could they still think I was the one in the wrong here? I'd given them everything. I had sacrificed my time, my energy, my resources to help them, and yet they couldn't even understand why I was walking away. But that was their problem now, not mine. The next week, I received a package in the mail. It wasn't anything I expected. When I opened it, I found a letter. It was from my mom. The letter was brief but impactful. It read, "You've made your decision, Sam. But know this. When you need family, we won't be there. And you'll be alone. We hope you understand the cost of your choice." I read the letter over and over, my emotions in a whirlwind. I felt a cold sting in my chest, but there was also something else, a strange sense of relief. This was their final attempt to guilt trip me. But I was too far gone now. I couldn't let them pull me back into their web of manipulation. I crumpled the letter up and threw it in the trash. It felt oddly liberating. The more they tried to pull me back, the more I realized that I wasn't the one who needed them. It was them who needed me, and they had taken that for granted for far too long. But as I sat there, a nagging thought crept into my mind. What if they tried something else? Something even more desperate? What if their tactics escalated beyond just words? I didn't know yet, but I was ready for whatever they would throw my way. This time, I wouldn't back down. Not for them, not for anyone. A few days passed, and I managed to push the constant worry about my family to the back of my mind. I was living my life, my real life, without the heavy weight of their expectations on my shoulders. But then, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, I got another call. This time, it was from my mom. For a brief moment, I considered not answering, but a part of me, despite everything, still wanted to know what they would say next. So, I picked up. "Sam," my mom's voice was calm but strained, almost like she was treading carefully. "We need to talk." I took a deep breath. I had steeled myself for this. "What's this about?" I asked, my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. I know you're angry," she said. "And I know you think I've been unfair to you, but we need to talk about James. He's in real trouble." There it was. The guilt trip. My stomach clenched, but I didn't let it show. "Mom, you can't keep putting this on me. I've done everything for him, and he keeps messing up. I can't keep bailing him out." "I know," she said, her voice suddenly breaking. "But you have to understand, Sam. James isn't over his head. He's spiraling, and he's been arrested." I froze, the words hanging in the air like a weight I couldn't escape. I hadn't been expecting this. My heart started to race. "Arrested? What happened?" There was a long pause, and when she finally spoke again, it was in a quieter, almost defeated tone. "He was caught in some kind of financial scam. He trusted the wrong people, and now he's facing charges. They're threatening to send him to jail." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. James had always been reckless, but this felt different. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Sympathy? Guilt? "Is he okay?" I asked, despite myself. "Physically, yeah," she said, but I could hear the weight of everything in her voice. "But he's not okay, Sam. And I don't know what to do. He needs you. We need you." I bit my lip. I had been waiting for them to pull something like this. But hearing the desperation in her voice, it hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just about money or favors anymore. It was about something far more serious. Something that felt like it could change everything. "Mom, I don't know what you want me to do," I said, my voice faltering. "I've already given him everything. I've given you everything. And you just keep asking for more." "I know," she whispered, almost as if ashamed. "I never meant for it to get this far. But you're the only one who can help him now. Please, Sam. He's your brother." For a moment, the silence between us stretched on, heavy with unspoken words. I felt my resolve wavering. Part of me wanted to just walk away, to keep living my life without the constant pull of their problems. But another part of me, the part that had always been there for them, was fighting the urge to say no. "You've hurt me, too, Mom," I said quietly. "All these years, I've been the one you leaned on, but no one ever asked how I felt. No one ever cared about what I needed." "I'm sorry, Sam," she said, and there was no anger in her voice this time. Just regret. "I know I've made mistakes, but you're all I have left. Please, just think about it. James needs you, and I don't know what I'd do without you." The weight of her words hung in the air, and for the first time, I started to feel like I was the one being tested. I had walked away once, but now it felt like the stakes were higher. I didn't want to be the person who abandoned family in their darkest hour, but I also couldn't go back to being the person who was always expected to fix everything. "Let me think about it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I understand," she replied, and we hung up. The following days were a whirlwind. I found myself constantly replaying the conversation in my mind. I couldn't shake the image of James, alone, in trouble, and desperate. I was torn between wanting to help and not wanting to fall back into the same old patterns. But I also knew something had to change. This cycle couldn't go on forever. So, I did what I'd promised myself I wouldn't. I gave in. I reached out to a lawyer and helped James with his legal troubles. I couldn't let him face the consequences of his actions alone. But this time, it wasn't the same as before. I wasn't giving him the money to bail him out. I wasn't solving all his problems. I was setting boundaries. I was doing what I needed to do to ensure that, if things ever got better, they would stay better. And while things weren't perfect, James was still the same old James, and my mom was still holding on to her expectations. I realized something. It wasn't about completely cutting them off. It was about finding balance. I could help, but I wouldn't lose myself in the process. In the end, I learned that sometimes taking care of family doesn't mean giving them everything they ask for. It means knowing when to step back, when to set boundaries, and when to demand respect for myself and for the life I had built.